All right, let's do it.
All right. Joining me on the line, she's brand new to We Are Iowa Local 5. She's the brand new sports director. Well, not brand new. She came onto the team back in March. Ladies and gentlemen, and here goes the name. Ah, dang it. I asked her beforehand if I said her name right, and then I went to say it, and it completely... Reina Garcia, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for chatting with me. You had it the first time,
I
and then
did.
you lost the confidence. I don't know what happened.
It's exactly what I said would happen. Anyways, Rena, thank you so much for joining me today. I was trying to explain to her off air, what I was kind of going for with this, and it's just fun and, talking and all that. And then, of course, I make the giant butt of myself right at the beginning of it. So, Rena, I'm guessing you just love being here with me so far.
It's fun so far. We're up to as good a start as we can. As I like to say, we're not in mid-season form yet. So
there you go.
I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, let's get down to it. College football for the state of Iowa, at least for the Big Four, begins this weekend. Iowa, Iowa State, Drake, and UNI all in action. In different spots and all that. Let's start with Iowa State, and because you have some Big 12 ties. You're from Kansas, right?
Yes, I am actually a K-State grad, so I'm pretty familiar with the Big 12.
Oh, you're used to Farmageddon then, aren't you?
So yeah, I was pretty excited to kind of land in familiar territory when I got here.
Real quick, is it weird having to cheer for Iowa State, being a K-State grad?
Not really, because in all of my time, I've been a K-State fan long even before I went to school there. My grandpa was a really big K-State fan, and he would always take us grandkids out to K-State games, and we'd always tailgate, and my grandma would make us fresh burritos and stuff.
Nice.
So I've been a fan for a long time, but that rivalry was never really. At least for our family, not one we really focus on. We were just so focused on we hate KU. Like, as many Wildcat fans, and as I've learned while I've been up here, I've heard some Cyclone fans also share a similar distaste for the Jayhawks. So that was comforting when I came up here.
Yeah, it is absolutely, especially in basketball when Kansas and Iowa State hook up at Hilton. Make sure you're there because it's going to be great. It'll be unlike anything you've ever seen before.
Oh yeah, well even when I was able to cover Iowa State's Sweet 16 game, I think it was my second week here, and I ran into some Iowa State fans, and one of them showed me the shirt they had that said the NCAA tournament where all 63 teams, whatever, hate KU too, and I just thought that was hilarious. I'm like, okay.
That's wonderful.
I love that.
Well, over on the football side of things, Iowa State going to kick off their season against Southeast Missouri State up at Jack Trice. It's a 1:00 kick. Now, it's an interesting time for Iowa State because they're coming off a season that I think it's easy to say, and I think a lot of people would agree, that it was disappointing. You had a team that was possibly going to be the best ever Iowa State football team ever, and that doesn't come along very often. And, things didn't go the way they wanted. You had, who was it? Texas Tech that kicked a mile-long field goal to beat you at the end of the game. And stuff like that happened. What are we looking at for the Cyclones this year?
I think, and I was talking to Jeff Woody, who does the Cyhawk Game Day show with me, and we were talking about, this year is a little bit of a mystery because you're losing two, centerpieces of the offense in Brock Purdy and Breece Hall. I mean, and those are enormous shoes to fill for a guy like Hunter Deckers, who's we haven't seen a lot of him. So we don't really know what he's bringing to the table. He told us at Media Day, it's very different going from practicing for 2 years to going out and being the guy. So I think it's a little bit of a mystery there. And then with, for the running game with Jyrell Brock, Breece Hall is kind of a once in a generation type player. He did so much for that offense. So he has big shoes to fill. And I think, that's going to be key for them, is having a good running game to kind of help support Hunter in terms of trying to establish himself. And, I think the deep ball has kind of been something they were hoping to develop this season, but it helps when you have guys like Xavier Hutchinson coming back, probably their most dynamic playmaker. So I think they definitely have all the pieces on offense to at least have some success there. Who knows, maybe in a little bit more. We just don't know what Hunter Deckers is bringing from an on-game field perspective. But, Matt Campbell had a lot of good things to say about him the other day, about his intangibles, which is something I think Brock Purdy was really known for, is, maybe what he lacked in talent, he definitely had in the toughness and the grit and the want to. And then as far as the defense goes, I mean, you got guys like Will McDonald, Orion Vance, you got leaders back, and you got a lot of hungry young guys who want to show that, they want to prove the doubters wrong. I think they all know that people maybe don't have high expectations for them this year, but they seem to know what they are capable of, and they have all the confidence in the world in themselves.
Reina Garcia, the sports director for We Are Iowa Local 5, on the line with me right now, talking about Iowa State at the moment. It is kind of an interesting situation, and it's an interesting time in college football, because I've seen a lot of the breakdowns of the conference this year, and they're like, there's Oklahoma, and there's like a crapshoot of about 5 or 6, or possibly in some people's eyes, all of the teams in the Big 12 possibly being able to be good enough to make it. And going back to Iowa State, what we were talking about for their season last year, it's not like they were blown out by anybody.
Yeah.
It's not like when I say it didn't go as well as they wanted, that's kind of what it is. It's like it wasn't bad by any stretch, it just wasn't what they expected.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just it's putting the pieces all together, and I think that's what one of the guys mentioned yesterday in the presser, is that it's really about they have the pieces there. I think they had them last year, but it's just can we put it together for a full game? And I think that's what you saw in a lot of, you mentioned it, the losses weren't bad. A lot of them were actually really close games, but it's just things, silly mistakes, or maybe just not being able to close things out really made the difference.
Yeah.
And reflected, I think, in kind of the subpar record, compared to what people were expecting, but they had all the pieces there.
I'm looking at the record from last year. I think, let's see, 10 points there. I think the worst loss they had was actually the Iowa game, which was only 10 points. So, and that's a rivalry game, so you throw that out the window. Real quick, going back to the game this weekend, has there been any talk about Iowa State starting strong? Because it seems like under Matt Campbell, that first game is never indicative of what the team is at the end of the year. And there is a large gap between those two teams. Has there been talk about a strong start to the season?
Whenever you come into this first game, typically you're playing an opponent who you're expected to beat, right? But as we've seen, there are certainly cases where, these teams come into their house and they beat these teams that they are not expected to. So I think from Iowa State's side, I mean, they are not overlooking this first game. I think they're well aware if they are not on the top of their game, teams are hungry and they want to be able to say, yeah, we beat a Big 12 team. So I think there is emphasis there, and they really want to set the tone for this season. And I think they are really motivated with, a lot of people maybe not exactly believing in them or maybe having high expectations. So I do think they want to really set the tone with this first game.
That does help out some teams from time to time, is when we'll talk about Iowa here in a second, but I always think that the years that Iowa does the best is when nobody's talking about them. And, you look at last year when, Brock Purdy, he's going to be the Heisman Trophy winner. They're a dark horse for the, for the football playoff. I mean, that's a lot of pressure on a team.
Yeah. It is. And so I think that definitely helps. And I think it helps when you have a chip on your shoulder, to be honest. I mean, there's no better motivation than
You're not wrong.
When you feel like people are doubting you.
Reina Garcia from We Are Iowa Local 5 on the line with me right now, sports director. If you had to, and listen, I know it's kind of cliche to do the whole, hey, how do you think they're going to be at the end of the year? What do you think's going to happen with Iowa State this year? Do you think they're at the end of the year they're going to look back and be proud of it? Is it going to be a disappointment? Is it going to be, holy crap, we really outkicked our coverage here? What do you think is going to happen by the end?
I think there will be some bumps and bruises along the way because, like we said, we
Kansas
don't
State.
Really know. Yeah, I might be a little biased there. But I think it will be, at least terms record-wise, I think it may be a similar season to what we saw last year, but that's just because they have so many new pieces coming into the fold, and who knows, I'm inclined, maybe this is my optimism as a newcomer, but I think they may even kind of outdo expectations a little bit if they can get all these pieces to click, especially when you have new elements in the fold. I think maybe that could work to their advantage, and maybe teams may not be expecting what they're bringing to the table if they can get to that. So I think it maybe will be more of the same record-wise, but I don't think it will be a season where people look at it and think, wow, that's really disappointing. I think maybe it will be like, it will be more so of people saying this is maybe what we expected for a team that's, I don't want to say in a rebuild, but they're trying to figure out who they are going forward without some of these marquee names that carried the program before.
Exactly. Reina Garcia joining me on the line talking about college football. Switching gears over to the Iowa Hawkeyes in the Big Ten. They'll open their season up this weekend as well. I believe that game is going to be on FS1, and they're taking on San Diego State, who, if memory serves, South Dakota State. And if memory serves, South Dakota State isn't bad, as I recall.
No, not at all. And they actually kind of some crossover from my last market. They have really good, and his name escapes me at the moment, but a great freshman running back that was from the Joplin area. That was in Joplin, Missouri before this. And so they definitely have some dynamic players. They had success as a program. And one thing we heard from the Iowa guys yesterday is they are not overlooking South Dakota State at all, because if I remember correctly or saw correctly, it was maybe, in 2017 or so that they got beat by North Dakota State.
Yeah.
So,
it's them. Western Michigan went into Kinnick one year and won.
So
they're not invincible.
Yes, exactly. And I think the players know that from what we heard from them yesterday. I think a lot of people said, a lot of the players said, we have respect for them, and we're not overlooking them. We don't care, who the team is. I mean, we just know anyone can be beaten, and that includes ourselves. So I think they're coming into this with a lot of respect for South Dakota State, and they know what can happen if, kind of similar to Iowa State, if they are not on their game, they know what can happen.
I think for most Iowa fans, I think the biggest question is what they're going to look like on offense this year. Because if there was an absolute weak point of their game last year, I mean, they were an elite level team on special teams and defense, and then they had a broke down old 70s beater as their offense. I mean, it was so disproportionate to what the rest of the team was.
Yeah, and I think that is going to be another key to what kind of season they're going to have. I think very similarly to Iowa State, it's going to go as the quarterback goes here. And, obviously last year did not go great.
No, but it did not.
And so it's kind of like, are they going to turn the corner this year? Because I think they have to, in order for Iowa to really reach that level that we've seen them be capable of. This offense has to have more production, and it can't just all be on the tight ends. I mean, I know there has been a rich history of having really great tight ends who have been, huge in terms of production for the offense, but I think at some point you have to have receivers who, can contribute just as much, and the run game. And you saw that last year with Tyler Goodson, great back. But that's another thing they'll have to fill this year, is who's going to step into his shoes and try and provide maybe that balance that can help the offense maybe take some more chances down the field, or try and get that dynamic playmaking in there. Because I think that's kind of what they lack, is there's just not enough dynamic playmaking to be productive and win games by a large margin, or maybe win games that they weren't winning before.
At some point, and I don't know when it was, but it seemed like Iowa's running game turned into kind of a joke, which that used to be kind of the backbone of everything they did. It didn't matter if you were whatever they could do, they could run the ball. And then, Tyler Goodson, yes, he was a great back, but there was times when it's like, for every time he got you a first down, he was, putting you behind the sticks for second down because he lost 4 yards, I think it just goes to show you how. Oh, sorry, go ahead. No. Keep, please.
Yeah, I think that just goes to show you have to have a consistent run game, because that's what allows you to be balanced. If you can, that's kind of what you rely on to help move the chains. And so when you kind of have this up and down, it doesn't give your offense a chance to get into the rhythm. And I think that's something Iowa really needs is some consistency that allows you to maybe take more chances down the field, or over the middle, just things like that.
Yeah.
I think the run game is going to be a huge part of that.
I've always thought that Iowa could benefit from a more mobile quarterback. And listen, Spencer Petras, I'm sure he's a nice kid. He's not mobile, though. I mean, I always thought it would be interesting if you put Brock Purdy on Iowa because he wasn't a running quarterback, but he could extend a play long enough for some magic to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, with Spencer, I think it's kind of one of those you know what you're going to get, which is on one hand nice because you know what to expect. It's not a wild card, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, it's like when you kind of have that predictability, it maybe doesn't keep teams on their toes as much as maybe you would like them to be. So, maybe they try something different this year. I don't know, but I would imagine maybe they stick to the game plan, maybe just try and execute better is maybe what they'll try. I don't know how, open they are to maybe taking a little bit more risk, but something drastic needs to happen for sure with this offense if they want to turn the corner.
Rena, that was the one moment where I go, you know what? I'm not sure she's watched a lot of Hawkeye football over the years.
Yeah, from what I've heard, that it's not risky is not really a way to describe the offense. But hey,
no.
You know what? You got I call this my newcomer optimism. I'm like, maybe they just say, hey, nothing has worked, so let's try it. What's the worst that could happen?
I think they live in a world where Iowa's offense is never going to set the world on fire. But when you make it one-dimensional, it's so bad because, if all of a sudden Spencer Petras can't throw the ball to anybody, then they know you're going to run, and they know Spencer Petras isn't going to tuck the ball and run, so your options are really, really limited. And it makes them so one-dimensional that it's hard. Like, listen, you're a K-State fan. We get it. I'm a huge Iowa fan, and it is hard to watch some of those games because if they had a C- offense last year, imagine what they could have done. They did all of that last year with a offense that was an F. I mean, if you're going to be real honest about it, that offense was not good,
Yeah, absolutely. It almost kind of reminds me of I'm a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So I can definitely relate to this idea of, every other phase of the game being great, but that offense is just so stuck in the mud. And as much as I love Ben Roethlisberger, that offense just did not go remotely even close to where it needed to, even though we had an all-world defense.
Well,
I'm not bitter or anything.
No,
ended, as you
no,
can tell,
me either.
But that's what it kind of reminds me of from everything I've gathered so far is just this offense. It's so frustrating because it's just like this team. There's so many talented phases of the defense, special teams, but it's just the offense can't. Even if they just produced enough, that's all you would need for this team to really go to the next level. But they couldn't even do that. So that makes it, I'm sure, very frustrating for Hawkeye fans knowing just how far this team can go. But the offense they can't help get them there.
And it's always so hit or miss. I mean, you look at early the season last year, Iowa at Maryland, and they just blow the doors off Maryland in a game that everybody was picking Maryland for. And then, 2 or 3 games later, you can't move the ball against anybody. And it's just it is exactly what you said. It is so frustrating sometimes. Reina Garcia on the line with me right now as we talk about college football. She's from We Are Iowa Local 5, Sports Director over there. We'll have all her links at the bottom of the page. I know we were going to stick to those two, but real quick, I'd feel bad if I didn't say it. Northern Iowa actually has a really cool game this week, and they're actually taking on Air Force. They're going to be on the road this weekend.
Yeah.
Which, that doesn't happen. Yeah. Usually they open up, like they had the one year where they played Wisconsin, where they almost beat Wisconsin, and then they usually play like Iowa State or Iowa, but this is an interesting one.
Yeah, I don't know how like you said, these matchups don't happen often. It looks like this is actually the first time these two teams have ever met, so a huge opportunity to make a statement win in this first game. I think that's what you want heading into this is a chance to get eyes on you that weren't on you before, and if you come out with a win, what a better way to start your season off?
If I remember right, Northern Iowa, and I apologize for not knowing off the top of my head, but Northern Iowa, I believe, has a pretty good lineup coming back, and they should be pretty good this year.
Yeah, I mean, you lose a player like Trevor Penning, which is a total beast of a player. From all accounts, he's doing pretty well with the Saints right now.
He's doing okay.
Like he's on track to win that.
Well, other than
job.
starting fights.
Yeah, being a little feisty there, but hey, that's what you want. That's what you want out of your guys.
So
No fear, but yeah, maybe not. Friendly fights. There you go. We'll put it that way. But yeah, overall, they're turning a good team, and I think this is the perfect opportunity to really set, like we said, set the tone in this first game. And they're kind of on the opposite end that Iowa and Iowa State are, and that they're kind of the small school opponent. So I think this is a great chance for them to really start out with a bang.
And let's face it, Air Force isn't usually a world beater in college football. They did beat Louisville in the First Responder Bowl last year, so should be interesting.
So yeah.
Drake also, they're taking on North Dakota State. I mean, that's going to get rough, I believe.
That's a tough game one. But when we were at Media Day a few weeks ago, the guys were pumped, and I think that's the best attitude to have. I mean, obviously no one's going to go into this game thinking, we are going to lose, but I think, I think a lot of the guys are very hungry with, last season obviously did not turn out the way they had wanted to, and they felt like they left a lot on the table, and they really want to turn things around this year. And so I think this is a great way to start, and it's good motivation to try and knock off a top team in your first game. It probably won't happen in all, likelihood, but I think they have a chance to really prove to themselves we can compete, or we can kind of show that we can hang with some of these guys and kind of gain momentum for the rest of the season. And I think that's the advantage of going up against an opponent like that.
Absolutely. Reina Garcia from We Are Iowa Local 5, Sports Director over there on the line with me right now. As we wrap up, I don't want to get too far into, who's your, 4 teams, but what are you excited about for college football this year?
I think I'm just really excited to experience just these new game day environments. In my last market, we didn't have any Division I schools really that we covered, a lot of Division II. So it's cool to go to different schools and really get to see what their game day environments are like and just the feel of things. I think that's always the cool feeling for me whenever I'm covering these games, is just taking in the environment, seeing the traditions. And I think that's what I'm most looking forward to, is just being able to experience that for myself.
Where are you going to be this weekend?
I will be at the Iowa State game. So I'll be over at Jack Trice. We'll be doing our Cyhawk show before that. So after that, I'm heading right over to the game.
Awesome. Reina Garcia joining me on the line, Sports Director at We Are Iowa Local 5. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it. And I'm sorry I bumbled your name at the very beginning, because I couldn't just start I couldn't just start out this relationship well. It had to be like, I'm going to throw that down the well real quick.
It is all good. I was just happy to be on with you.